You've walked into a room and said all the right things, the right words, the right tone, the right data, and still, you lost the room. You've sat across from someone, a coworker, a partner, a friend, and tried to reach them, tried to lead them through something hard, and they shut down. They went quiet, they nodded, and then did exactly the opposite of what you asked. You've been in a meeting that was spiraling, tension rising, voices getting louder, and you stayed calm on the outside, professional, composed, while everything inside was screaming. You knew something was off. You just didn't know what, or how to fix it. That's not a strategy problem. That's not a communication problem. That is an emotional intelligence problem. And it is the most quietly career-defining, relationship-shaping, leadership-breaking skill that almost nobody talks about directly. Most people think leadership is about having the right answer, the right plan, the right title. They think if they just speak louder or more confidently or with better data, people will follow. But here's what the best leaders in any room actually know. People don't follow logic. People follow understanding. They follow the person who makes them feel seen, heard, known. And that requires a completely different set of skills than what most of us were ever taught. The difference between someone who loses the room and someone who leads it is not intelligence. It's not experience. It's not even charisma in the way you think about it. It comes down to 4 things: awareness, empathy, regulation, influence. Awareness, the ability to read what's actually happening in a room, in a conversation, in a person, before a single word is spoken. Empathy, not the soft kind they put on motivational posters, but the kind that's sharp and strategic. The kind that lets you understand what someone needs before they know how to ask for it. Regulation, the ability to feel everything that's happening inside you and still choose your response, to stay grounded when the pressure is highest. Because the moments that define your leadership are never the easy ones. And influence, not pressure, not manipulation, not authority, real influence. The kind built on understanding what actually moves people and meeting them there. These 4 things. That's what we're building today. In the next 60 minutes, you'll walk through 8 chapters, each one a specific trainable skill. Not theory, not abstract concepts, skills. With practice steps you can use in real situations, starting today. We start with awareness, with you. With the pause between stimulus and response, where everything begins. We move into listening, the kind that actually builds trust, not just the kind that looks polite. We go deeper into regulation, feeling without being consumed, staying present under pressure. And we finish where it all leads, influence. The kind that doesn't need a title, the kind that lasts. We go through each chapter the same way. The real pain, the moment that cost people the most. The principle, one clean truth to anchor on. The picture, an image or contrast that makes it stick. The practice, specific, step by step. The prompt, 3 questions to turn inward, and the punchline. 1 sentence, the one you'll carry with you. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to dominate every conversation. You need to be the most aware. Because if you can't read people, truly read them, what they're feeling, what they're not saying, what they actually need, you can't lead them. Not sustainably, not meaningfully, not in a way that lasts. And that changes today. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop reacting, start reading. Think about the last time someone said something that got under your skin. Maybe it was a coworker who dismissed your idea in front of the whole team. Maybe it was a text from your partner that landed wrong. Maybe it was one comment, small, almost offhand, and yet your whole body responded before your brain had a chance to catch up. Your jaw tightened. Your chest got hot. And before you even knew what was happening, you were already talking, already defending, already reacting, not responding, reacting. There's a difference, and that difference is everything. Most people don't realize what's actually costing them in their hardest moments. In leadership, in relationships, in conversations under pressure. It's not a lack of knowledge. It's not a lack of experience. It's the absence of a gap. The missing space between what you feel and what you do. You've watched it happen to other people. The manager who snaps at a team member and loses their respect in 30 seconds flat. The colleague who sends the email they should have waited 24 hours on and spends a week cleaning up the wreckage. The person who gets challenged in a meeting and immediately goes defensive, even though they had the right answer all along. And if you're honest with yourself, you've been there too. Not because you're weak, not because you don't care, but because your brain is faster than your values. The moment you perceive a threat, real or imagined, your nervous system fires before your reasoning catches up. By the time your judgment arrives, your mouth has already moved, the damage is already done, and the fastest reaction in the room is almost never the smartest one. That is the pain of low emotional intelligence under pressure. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel like a failure in the moment. It feels like being right. It feels like standing up for yourself. It feels justified. And then the meeting ends. The conversation cools, and you're left looking at what your reaction actually produced. And it's rarely what you wanted. Here's the principle that changes this, and it is deceptively simple. Emotional intelligence begins the moment you create a pause between stimulus and response. Not a long pause, not a meditation retreat. 3 seconds, that's the gap. 3 seconds between what hits you and what you choose to do with it. In those 3 seconds, you go from passenger to driver, from reactive to deliberate, from someone being led by the moment to someone leading through it. Viktor Frankl, who survived experiences most of us will never face, wrote that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies your freedom. He was right, and that space is a skill. It can be trained, it can be built, and once you have it, very few situations will be able to take it from you. Think of your nervous system like a smoke alarm. When it senses heat, criticism, conflict, embarrassment, rejection, it fires immediately. It's designed to. That alarm has kept humans alive for hundreds of thousands of years. But here's the thing. Your smoke alarm cannot tell the difference between a grease fire and burnt toast. Both will set it off. EQ doesn't silence the alarm. EQ teaches you to check before you run, to ask, is there actually a fire here? Or did I just need to open a window? Me. The person who walks into a room and reacts to everything loses authority fast, even if they're technically right. The person who walks into a room, reads what's actually happening, and chooses their response deliberately. That person commands the room without raising their voice. So here's how you build the gap, starting today. First, when you feel the heat rising, that tightness in your chest, that urge to speak immediately, count 3 seconds before you open your mouth. Not visibly, not dramatically, just internally. 1, 2, 3. That pause is not weakness. That pause is precision. See? Second, in those 3 seconds, run a single question. Is this worth my energy right now? Not whether you're right. Not whether the other person deserves a response. Simply, is reacting here going to produce what I actually want? Most of the time, the honest answer will slow you down in exactly the right way. Third, choose your move deliberately. You have 2 clean options, a specking, a response with intention or a silence with intention. Both are powerful. What you want to eliminate is the third option, the reaction without intention, the one that cost you the most and gives back the least. Cut the habit of defending yourself in real time in the moment, when your emotions are highest. Add this instead. 6 words that will save you more than you know. Let me think about that for a second. 6 words. They make you look more in control, not less. They give you the space to actually be right instead of just sounding right in the moment. Now ask yourself honestly, when was the last time your immediate reaction made a situation better? And when was the last time it made things worse? What would have changed if you had waited 3 seconds? And the person you respect most under pressure, the one who stays steady when everything gets hard, what do they do in the moment before they speak? You already know the answer. You've seen it. You know what it looks like to be controlled instead of controlling. And you know what it looks like when someone chooses deliberately, stays grounded, and leads from a place of clarity instead of activation. That's not a gift. That's a practice. Stop reacting, start choosing. That's where leadership begins. Chapter 2. Read the room before you speak. You've prepared everything. The numbers are solid, the argument is clear. You've rehearsed the key points in your head on the drive over, and you genuinely know, that what you're about to say is right. And then you walk in. And something is off. You can feel it before anyone says a word. The energy is flat. 2 people aren't making eye contact. Someone's arms are crossed. The conversation before you arrived clearly didn't go well, and whatever was said is still hanging in the air like smoke. But you have your agenda. So you start. You lay out your idea. You make your case. You hit your talking points, and the room stays cold. No one leans in. Questions come, but they're not curious questions. They're resistant ones. And by the time you finish, you already know. It didn't land. Not because your idea was bad. Not because you weren't prepared. because you read the content of the room and completely missed the emotional weather inside it. This happens more than most people admit. And the cost isn't just one bad meeting. It's credibility. It's trust. It's the accumulated damage of being someone who shows up with answers before they've understood the room. Here's what separates the people who consistently move others, in business, in relationships, in any room, under any pressure, from those who don't. It is not the quality of their ideas. It is not their confidence or their track record or their credentials. It is timing. Specifically, it's the ability to read where people are emotionally before deciding how and when to speak. Because here's the truth. Most of us were never taught. What you say matters far less than when and how you say it. The same idea delivered to the same person in two different emotional states can produce two completely opposite results. One plants a seed, one builds a wall. The difference isn't the idea. It's whether you read the room first. So what does it actually mean to read a room? It means that before you speak, you observe. You gather information that has nothing to do with words. You notice the posture of the people around you. Are they open or closed? Are they leaning in or pulling back? You notice the pace of conversation. Is it fast and pressured or slow and heavy? You notice who is talking and who has gone quiet. Because the people who go quiet in a tense room are often the ones holding the most important information. And they've decided it's not yet safe to share it. Can you remember a time when you walked into a conversation and someone else instantly read where you were? Before you said a single word, they adjusted. They softened their tone or gave you space or asked the right question, and you felt it. You felt seen before you felt heard. That is the effect of someone reading the room well. And that effect builds more trust in 60 seconds than a perfect argument builds in an hour. The opposite is also true. Think about the last time someone came at you with full energy and zero awareness, pushing their agenda while you were clearly not in a place to receive it. What did you do? You shut down. You said what you needed to say to end the conversation. You stopped being honest because the other person wasn't creating a space where honesty felt safe. That's what happens when leaders skip this step. They get the words right and the timing completely wrong, and people stop opening up to them, not because of distrust, but because of misattunement. The signal you send when you don't read the room is this: I came here for me, not for you, even if that's not your intention. So how do you build this skill deliberately? Start before you walk through the door. Before any important conversation, a performance review, a difficult discussion with someone you care about, a pitch, a negotiation, give yourself 60 seconds of observation, not preparation, observation. Watch the room before you enter it. Watch the person before you address them. What's their body doing? What's the energy doing? What happened before you arrived that might still be affecting this moment, right now? Then, when you're in the room, resist the urge to start with your agenda. Start with a question instead. Not a tactical question, an honest one. Something as simple as, how are you feeling about where things stand? Or, before we get into it, is there anything on your mind that we should clear first? These questions do something remarkable. They shift the dynamic from presentation to conversation. And conversations are where real movement happens. Are you walking into your most important interactions ready to speak, or ready to listen first? That's not a small distinction. That is the entire game. Finally, match your energy and pace to the room, not to your script. If the room is heavy, slow down. If the room is scattered and anxious, anchor it. Lower your voice, slow your breathing. Give people something steady to orient around. You become the emotional weather system the room needs, instead of adding more turbulence to what's already there. This is what the best leaders, the best communicators, the best partners do, not just in professional settings, but in every room they walk into. They don't arrive broadcasting. They arrive receiving. They collect information before they deploy their perspective. And because of that, when they do speak, people are actually ready to hear them. What is the emotional temperature of the people around you right now? At work, at home, in the relationships that matter most? When did you last walk into a conversation fully prepared to speak and realize too late that what the other person actually needed was for you to see them first? The room is always telling you something. The question is whether you're listening before you start talking. Read the room, then lead the room. Chapter 3. Listen like a leader. Most people think they're good listeners. They're not. And that's not an insult. It's just an honest look at what listening actually requires versus what most of us do in conversation. We show up. We make eye contact. We nod at the right moments. We wait for the other person to finish. And then we say what we were already planning to say before they started talking. That is not listening. That is waiting with eye contact. Real listening, the kind that actually changes relationships, builds teams, and earns the kind of trust that no title or salary can buy, is something most people have never been trained to do. And the gap between what we think we're doing and what we're actually doing is costing us more than we realize. Think about the last time someone truly listened to you. Not just heard you, listened. They weren't checking their phone. They weren't preparing their response while you were mid-sentence. They were fully there, present. And when you finished speaking, they reflected back something that told you they had actually followed not just your words, but the meaning behind them. How did that feel? Now think about how rarely that happens. And think about what it would mean if you became that person for the people around you. Here's the hard truth about most conversations. We listen to respond, not to understand. The moment someone begins speaking, most of our mental bandwidth shifts immediately to evaluation. Do I agree? Do I disagree? What's my counterpoint? How does this affect me? By the time they finish their last sentence, we've already built our reply. We haven't absorbed what they said. We filtered it through what we already believed. And here's what that cost you as a leader. Formal or informal, in a boardroom or at your kitchen table. When people feel like they're not being heard, they stop sharing the important things. They give you the surface version, the safe version, the version they think you want to hear. And you lose access to the actual information you need, the real concerns, the real obstacles, the real state of things. You make decisions based on incomplete data, and you don't even know it. The most respected leaders in any room are often the ones speaking the least. That's not a coincidence, it's a strategy, it's awareness. They understand that the person who controls the quality of information in a conversation is not the one talking, it's the one listening. Because when you listen well, people tell you more than they plan to. They go deeper than they intended. They trust you with things they haven't shared with anyone else. And that intelligence, emotional, relational, situational, is what makes your eventual response worth listening to. So what does real listening actually look like in practice? Start with the 70-30 rule. In your next important conversation, set a quiet internal intention. You will speak 30% of the time and listen 70%, not because your perspective doesn't matter. It does. But because in most conversations, the other person needs to be heard before they're ready to truly hear you. Give them that first. You'll be surprised how much more they offer when they feel the space is genuinely theirs. Then, when they finish speaking, wait. One full breath before you respond. Not a performative pause, a real one. Let what they said actually arrive. Let it settle. This single habit signals something powerful to the person across from you, that you took their words seriously enough to sit with them for a moment before answering. In a world of instant reactions, that pause is rare, and rare things are noticed. When you do respond, start by reflecting before you redirect. Before you share your opinion, your solution, your counterpoint, you may say back what you heard. Not word for word, but the essence. Something like, what I'm hearing is that you're less concerned about the timeline and more concerned about whether the team has the resources to actually execute. Is that right? This does two things simultaneously. It proves you were paying attention, and it gives them the chance to correct you if you miss something, which means you get closer to the truth before you start solving for it. And there are things to cut entirely. Stop finishing other people's sentences. Stop jumping in the moment you see where they're heading. Stop checking your phone, even glancing at it, while someone is speaking to you. These habits don't just make people feel unheard, they make people feel unimportant. And people who feel unimportant around you will eventually stop bringing you anything worth hearing. Do the people in your life, the ones you lead, the ones you love, the ones you work beside every day, feel genuinely heard by you? Not just tolerated, not just given airtime, heard. And when was the last time you changed your mind about something because of what someone else said? Because if that hasn't happened recently, it's worth asking whether you've actually been listening, or just waiting. Listening like a leader is not passive. It is one of the most active, demanding, and high-return skills you can build. It requires you to quiet the noise inside your own head long enough to fully receive what another person is carrying. It requires patience when you want to push forward, stillness when you want to react, and genuine curiosity when you'd rather just be right. But here's what you get in return. You get truth. You get trust. You get the kind of relationship where people come to you first, because they know you'll actually hear them. That's not a soft skill. That's a leadership edge. Listen first. Lead second. That's the sequence that builds trust. Chapter 4. Feel it without being controlled by it. There is a version of emotional intelligence that people get completely wrong. They think it means not feeling things. They think the goal is to become calm, unshakable, almost robotic. A person who processes criticism without flinching, absorbs conflict without reacting, and moves through difficult situations as if nothing touches them. They admire that version. They try to build it. And in doing so, they don't develop emotional intelligence at all. They develop emotional suppression. And those two things are not just different. They produce opposite results. Suppression buries what you feel. Intelligence works with it. And there is a massive difference between those two paths. Let's start with something honest. You are going to feel things in difficult conversations, in high-stakes moments, in the rooms where the most is on the line. You're going to feel frustration when you're misunderstood, anxiety when the outcome matters, anger when something genuinely unjust happens right in front of you, fear when you're about to do something that carries real risk. These are not flaws. These are signals. Your emotional system is giving you information about what you're experiencing and what you value. The goal was never to silence it. The goal is to stop letting it drive. Because here's what happens when emotion drives without awareness behind the wheel. The frustration becomes a sharp word that damages a relationship you've spent years building. The anxiety becomes avoidance, and the conversation you needed to have 3 weeks ago still hasn't happened. The anger becomes a decision made in heat that looks completely different in the cold light of the following morning. And the fear becomes paralysis. The thing you knew you needed to do, not done because the feeling was louder than the intention. Have you ever said something in an emotional moment that you genuinely wished you could take back? Have you ever made a decision? Quit something, agreed to something, pushed someone away or pulled them too close, and realized later that it wasn't your values speaking? It was just the feeling, unmediated, unexamined, running the show. That's not weakness. That's the default. That's what happens to almost everyone who hasn't built the specific skill of feeling without being controlled. Here's the principle that changes everything. Emotional intelligence is not about feeling less. It is about feeling without losing your direction. The feeling comes, you allow it, you notice it, and then, crucially, you choose what you do next, instead of letting the feeling choose for you. Think of it this way. Imagine your emotions are waves in the ocean, strong ones sometimes, tall, fast, disorienting. You cannot stop the ocean from producing waves. You never could. Trying to suppress them doesn't calm the ocean. It just submerges you. But someone who has learned to surf doesn't fight the wave. They read it. They position themselves. They move with the energy of it instead of being thrown by it. That's what emotional regulation actually looks like in practice. Not stillness, not distance, skilled movement. The contrast matters. Someone who hasn't built this skill gets hit by the wave and reacts from wherever it throws them. Someone who has built it feels the full force of the wave and still decides where they land. So how do you actually build this? The first step is the most important and the most underestimated. When you feel something strong rising, in your chest, in your throat, in your hands, name it. Out loud internally, if not verbally. Not, I am frustrated, but I feel frustrated. That distinction is not semantic. It is neurological. When you say I am frustrated, you fuse your identity with the feeling. The feeling becomes you. When you say I feel frustrated, you create a centimeter of distance between yourself and the emotion. You become the observer instead of the observed. And that centimeter is where your choice lives. The second step is the stop technique. When the feeling is strong enough to threaten your response, stop. Take one breath, slowly and deliberately. Observe what you're feeling without judging it, then proceed with intention. 4 steps, 4 seconds. It sounds almost too simple to matter. It matters enormously. Are you using the stop technique in the moments that cost you most? Or are you reaching for it only after the damage is already done? The third step is building a daily practice of emotional awareness before you need it under pressure. Keep a 2-minute journal. Not a lengthy reflection, just one entry per day. One strong emotion you noticed, what triggered it, what you did with it. Over time, you will start to see your patterns. You will notice the specific situations that reliably bypass your reason. You will know your triggers before they know you. And that knowledge changes everything because you stop being ambushed by yourself. What emotion shows up most consistently in your hardest moments? And is it serving you or running you? The person you're trying to become, the one who leads with clarity, who stays steady when others don't, who can be trusted in high-pressure situations. That person is not someone who feels nothing. They feel everything. They've simply learned to feel without surrendering their direction to the feeling. That's the work. It's daily. It's quiet. Nobody sees you doing it, but everyone sees the result. Feel everything. Be controlled by nothing, and remember, this is what it means to read people, starting with yourself. Because if you cannot read your own emotions, if you cannot trace what you're feeling back to its source and choose your response deliberately, you will never be able to read anyone else's with the accuracy that real leadership requires. Chapter 5. Stay calm. When everything escalates. Nobody fails under easy conditions. That's the part nobody tells you. You can be patient when there's nothing to test your patience. You can be composed when the stakes are low and the room is comfortable and everyone is cooperative. You can be a good leader on a good day. Almost everyone can. The question is who you become when the pressure is real. When the deadline is 2 days away and 3 things have gone wrong simultaneously. When someone on your team breaks down in the middle of a critical project. When you're in a meeting and someone challenges you directly, not professionally, not fairly. And every person in the room is watching to see what you do next. When the plan falls apart and the people around you are looking to you for something steady to hold on to, that is when it counts. And that is exactly when most people lose it. Not dramatically, not always visibly, but something shifts. The voice gets tighter. The decisions get shorter and faster than they should be. The patience that was available an hour ago is suddenly gone. And the version of yourself that shows up under maximum pressure is often a version you wouldn't have chosen, if you'd had a moment to choose. Here's what's actually happening in those moments. When pressure escalates, your nervous system reads the environment as a threat. The same ancient wiring that kept your ancestors alive in genuinely dangerous situations fires in a modern conference room, in a difficult phone call, in a high-stakes conversation with someone who matters to you. Cortisol rises, tunnel vision sets in. Your capacity for nuanced thinking narrows exactly at the moment when you need it most. And the result is that the version of you that shows up under pressure is operating on less clarity, less patience, less access to the full range of your intelligence. This is not a character flaw, it is biology, but biology is not destiny. Because here's what the people who perform best under pressure have learned, not through luck or personality, but through deliberate practice. Calm is not the absence of pressure. Calm is a decision made in the presence of pressure. It is not something that happens to you when the conditions are right. It is something you choose, repeatedly, even when nothing around you makes it easy. Think about a commercial airline pilot sitting in the cockpit during severe turbulence. The aircraft is shaking, passengers are frightened, alarms may be sounding. And the pilot is not calm because the situation isn't serious. They're calm because their training has prepared them to trust the process more than the panic. They don't suppress what they feel, they channel it. They move through the protocol with precision because they've rehearsed it so many times that the pressure doesn't override the preparation. It activates it. That is the model. Pressure activates preparation. And the preparation for staying calm under fire is something you build before the fire starts, not during it. So what does that preparation actually look like? Start with your breath, because it is the fastest and most direct access point you have to your nervous system. When escalation begins, when you feel the heat rising, when the room gets charged, when your own internal state starts to tighten, use the 4-4-4 technique. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Exhale for 4 counts. Do it 3 times. This is not a wellness exercise. It is a physiological intervention. It directly activates your parasympathetic nervous system, counteracting the stress response in real time. 36 seconds. That's all it takes to begin shifting your internal state. 36 seconds that almost nobody takes, and that the best performers use without anyone noticing. Second, and this is one of the most counterintuitive leadership moves you can make, lower your voice when everything around you is escalating. Not because you're retreating, because you're anchoring. When a room is getting louder and more chaotic, a voice that gets quieter and steadier becomes the thing everyone orients toward. It signals someone here is in control, and that signal, communicated through nothing more than tone and pace, gives other people permission to calm down too. Your nervous system is contagious. So is your calm. Third, when escalation hits its peak, redirect the room's energy away from the problem and toward a question. Not a rhetorical one, a real, forward-facing one. Something like, what do we actually need right now to move this forward? That question does something powerful in the middle of chaos. It shifts the collective focus from what went wrong to what comes next. It breaks the feedback loop of escalation by introducing a new cognitive task, and it positions you, without announcing it, as the person leading the room through the difficulty rather than being consumed by it. Think about the situations where you consistently lose your composure, not the extreme ones, but the everyday ones, the conversation that always gets under your skin, the type of person whose behavior reliably bypasses your patience, the kind of pressure that finds the specific gap in your armor. Those patterns are not random, they are information. And when you know them, when you've identified your specific triggers before they find you, you can prepare for them the way a pilot prepares for turbulence, not by hoping it won't come, by knowing exactly what to do when it does. Because the truth is, the moments that define how others see you are almost never the good days. They're the days when everything goes sideways and you had every reason to lose it, and didn't. Those are the moments that build reputations. Those are the moments that create the kind of trust that no resume can manufacture. Those are the moments where leadership stops being a concept and becomes something real that people can feel standing next to you. In chaos, your calm is your authority. Build it before you need it. Practice it before it's tested. And when the pressure comes, and it always comes, you'll know exactly who you're going to be. Chapter 6. Understand what people don't say. Your employee says, "I'm fine," but they haven't made eye contact in 3 days. Their responses in team meetings have gone from engaged and detailed to short and careful. They used to push back, ask questions, challenge ideas, and now they just nod, quietly, quickly, and move on. You noticed. You told yourself it was probably nothing. Maybe they're just tired. Maybe they had a rough week. Maybe you're reading too much into it, but you knew. Somewhere underneath the logic, you used to talk yourself out of it. You knew something was wrong. Your partner says, "Don't worry about it." But the silence that follows is a different kind of silence than the comfortable kind you've shared for years. It has weight to it. It has direction. And later that night, when everything is surface level fine and technically pleasant, you can feel the distance, not geographic, not even emotional exactly, but the specific distance that comes from something unsaid sitting between two people who haven't found the words yet. You felt it, and you didn't know how to open the door. That moment, the moment you sensed something important and didn't know how to reach it, is one of the most common and most costly failures of emotional intelligence. Not because you were cruel or indifferent, but because nobody taught you how to hear what isn't said, how to read the signal beneath the surface, how to create the kind of space where the truth that people are carrying can actually come out. And the cost of missing that moment is not small. When people feel unseen, when they sense that the person across from them is only tracking the words and not the weight behind them, they make a quiet decision. They decide it isn't safe to be real, and from that point forward you get the managed version, the edited version. The version designed to keep the peace or protect themselves or avoid a conversation they don't believe you're ready to have. Think about the relationships in teams where the most important information never surfaced, where a problem that could have been solved early instead grew in silence until it became critical, where someone left, a job, a relationship, a friendship, and the people around them said they never saw it coming. Did they not see it? Or did they see the signs and not know what to do with them? Here is the principle that reshapes how you move through every important relationship in your life. What people don't say is almost always more important than what they do say. And emotional intelligence, real EQ, the kind that actually changes outcomes, is the ability to hear the silence, to read the space between the words, to notice what's present in a conversation even when it's never spoken aloud. Picture an iceberg. The part above the waterline, visible, measurable, easy to address, is the words people use. The part below, vast, heavy, determining everything about how the iceberg moves, is the emotion, the fear, the unmet need, the thing they haven't yet found a way to say. Most people in most conversations are only navigating the 10% they can see. The strongest leaders, the deepest partners, the most trusted friends, they've learned to read the 90% underneath. So, what does that actually look like in practice? Start by paying attention to the signals that don't require words. Watch for the shift from openness to guardedness, the moment someone's body language changes, when arms cross, when eye contact shortens, when answers that were once full become suddenly clipped. Watch for the absence of something that was previously present. The team member who used to bring you problems now brings you nothing. Not because nothing is wrong, but because they've stopped believing you're the right person to bring it to. Are you paying attention to what's disappeared from your relationships? The conversations that used to happen but no longer do? The honesty that was once present and has quietly gone elsewhere? When you sense that something is unsaid, create an opening, but do it without pressure. The fastest way to close a door that was almost open is to make someone feel interrogated. Instead, try something low stakes and genuinely curious. Is there anything on your mind that we haven't talked about yet? Or simply, how are you actually doing? Not the quick answer, the real one. These questions work not because they're clever, but because they signal safety. They tell the other person, I'm not just here for the surface, I have time for what's real. And then, this is the part most people skip, don't fill the silence that follows. When someone pauses after an honest question, the instinct is to rescue them, to offer an answer for them, to move on. Resist it. The silence after a real question is not empty. It is the space where people decide whether to trust you with the thing they've been carrying. Give them that space. Wait. Let the silence do its work. When was the last time you created that kind of space for someone and held it long enough for something true to come through? Notice too what happens in your own conversations when you are the one with something unsaid. What would need to be different in the other person, in the environment, in the quality of their attention for you to actually say it? Because the answer to that question is your blueprint for becoming the person others feel safe being honest with. You don't build that kind of trust through titles or track records. You build it through repeated moments of attention, through proving again and again that when someone lets you see beneath the surface, you handle what you find with care. Who in your life is carrying something right now that they haven't said to you? What would it take for them to say it? And are you building the kind of presence where that's even possible? The best leaders hear what isn't said. That's not a mystical skill, it's a practiced one. And it starts the moment you decide to listen not just to the words, but to everything surrounding them. Chapter 7. Influence without pressure. There is a version of influence that most people are familiar with, because most people have been on the receiving end of it at some point in their lives. It looks like this. Someone needs you to do something, so they push. They repeat themselves louder or with more urgency each time. They layer on consequences, either explicit or implied. They position their request as something that should be obvious, and your hesitation is something unreasonable. They use their authority, their seniority, their relationship with you as leverage, and eventually you do the thing. Not because you want to, not because you believe in it, but because the path of least resistance finally became shorter than the resistance itself. That is compliance, and it is often mistaken for influence. But watch what happens after. The person who complied does the minimum. They execute the letter of what was asked and nothing more. They don't bring their full effort, their creativity, their genuine investment, because none of those things were invited. They were pressured, not moved. And the next time a similar request comes from the same source, the wall goes up a little faster, the trust erodes a little further. The relationship narrows quietly but consistently toward the purely transactional. This is the long-term cost of pressure-based influence. It produces short-term movement and long-term distance. And most people who rely on it don't see the damage accumulating until the relationship is already thinned past the point of easy repair. Real influence works completely differently. Not softer, necessarily, but differently at the root. Real influence begins with understanding. Specifically, it begins with the question that most people skip entirely in their urgency to be heard. What does this person actually care about? Not what should they care about. Not what would make sense for them to care about given the circumstances. What do they actually value right now in this situation as the person they are today? Because here's what genuine influence requires. It requires you to connect what you're asking for, your goal, your need, your vision, to something that already matters to the person you're speaking with, not manipulatively. Not as a tactic, but as an honest recognition that people move toward things that serve what they value, not toward things that serve what you value. The moment you understand that distinction, everything about how you communicate changes. Think about the two versions of what influence looks like in practice. The first version walks into the conversation broadcasting. They've decided what they need, they've framed their argument, and their goal in the room is to transfer their conviction to you through repetition, logic, and if necessary, pressure. They are persuading at you. The second version walks in receiving. They've thought about you, specifically you, not a generic audience, before they finalize their approach. They've considered what you're carrying, what you're worried about, what you've said in previous conversations about what matters to you. And they build the bridge between their goal and your values before they start talking. When they speak, it doesn't feel like a push. It feels like an invitation. Which of those two versions do you respond to more easily? And which version do you more often bring into your own most important conversations? The shift from the first to the second is not complicated, but it requires genuine discipline. It requires you to sit with your agenda before the conversation and ask, what does the person I'm about to speak with actually care about? What are they worried about? What would make this idea feel like it belongs to them rather than something being imposed on them? And how can I frame what I need in a way that connects honestly to those things? This is not manipulation. Manipulation involves deceiving someone about what you want or what they're agreeing to. What we're describing is empathy applied strategically. Understanding another person well enough to speak their language, to meet them where they actually are, rather than where it's convenient for you to assume they are. There's also a specific and powerful shift in language that matters here. Move from telling to offering. Move from, you should do this, to, here's what I've seen work and here's why I think it fits your situation specifically. That shift changes the entire dynamic of the conversation. The first version positions you as the authority and the other person as the recipient. The second positions you as a thinking partner who has done the work of tailoring their perspective to the specific human in front of them. People resist the first instinctively. People lean toward the second because it respects their autonomy and their intelligence simultaneously. And perhaps the most important principle of all, let people feel like they are choosing, because they need to be. Real commitment, the kind that survives difficulty, that holds when the work gets hard, that doesn't require you to keep pushing to maintain, only comes from genuine choice. When someone chooses to support your vision, to follow your lead, to adopt your recommendation because they've understood it, and it connects to something they genuinely value, they bring themselves to it. They own it. And ownership is what turns agreement into action. People who are pressured into things do the minimum. People who are genuinely moved do more than you asked. That difference between the minimum and the more is the entire gap between pressure and influence. And it is built in the conversation, in the specific moment when you choose to understand before you ask, to connect before you persuade, to give the other person room to move towards you rather than dragging them. The leaders worth following never needed you to agree. They made you want to. Influence is earned through understanding, not demanded through authority. Chapter 8. Lead yourself first, always. Everything in this audiobook, every skill, every practice, every principle across the 7 chapters that came before this one, rests on a foundation that most people overlook entirely. Not because it's hidden, not because it's complicated, but because it's uncomfortable, because it asks something of you that is harder than any external skill you could develop. It asks you to look inward before you look outward, to hold yourself to the same standard of awareness, regulation, and honesty that you're trying to bring to your relationships and your teams and your most important conversations. The foundation is this: you cannot lead anyone further than you have led yourself. Not sustainably. Not in a way that earns real trust. Not in a way that holds when the pressure is genuinely high and the stakes are genuinely real. You can perform leadership for a while. You can project confidence you don't feel, model calm you haven't built, and ask things of others that you haven't asked of yourself. But performance eventually exhausts itself, and the gap between who you appear to be and who you actually are will eventually surface. In the decisions you make under stress, in the relationships that feel thin despite looking functional, in the quiet erosion of your own credibility with the people closest to you. The strongest leaders aren't the ones who never struggle. They are the ones who do the internal work consistently enough that their struggles don't run them. Are you doing that work? Not occasionally. Not when things get bad enough to force it. Consistently, as a daily practice, before anyone else needs anything from you. Because here is what happens when you don't. When your own emotional state is unexamined, it leaks. It shows up in the tone you didn't mean to use, in the patience that ran out faster than it should have, in the decision that felt rational in the moment and looks different the following morning with fresh eyes. The people around you, the ones you lead, the ones you love, are absorbing your unregulated state constantly. They are orienting around your energy even when you think you're hiding it. Children feel it, teams feel it, partners feel it. You are never as private as you think you are. And the inverse is equally true. When you've done the work, when you've taken care of your internal state before walking into the room, people feel that too. There is a quality of presence that regulated, self-aware people carry that is immediately recognizable. It isn't loudness. It isn't authority in the traditional sense. It is steadiness. The sense that the person in front of you is not going to be destabilized by whatever comes. That they can hold the weight of the conversation without dropping it. That you are safe to be honest with them because they are honest with themselves. That quality cannot be faked. It can only be built. So how do you build it? Start with 2 minutes every morning before the day takes over. Before you check your phone, before you respond to anything, before the demands of other people's needs fill the space. Take 2 minutes and check in with yourself honestly, not performatively. Ask, how am I actually feeling right now? What is driving me today? Is there something unresolved from yesterday that I'm carrying into this morning? What is my emotional state? And is it something I'm choosing, or something that's happening to me? This practice sounds almost embarrassingly simple. It is also one of the most underused tools available to anyone who leads people, because the leader who knows their own emotional weather before they walk into the room can adjust for it. They can say to themselves, I'm running low today, I need to be more deliberate in this conversation. Or, I'm carrying frustration from something unrelated. I need to make sure it doesn't redirect toward the wrong person. That self-knowledge is not weakness, it is precision. And precision in leadership changes outcomes. What would be different in your most difficult relationships if you walked into them knowing exactly what you were carrying, and had already begun to work with it instead of pretending it wasn't there? The second practice is building a personal recovery ritual, something specific and non-negotiable that helps you reset when the day has taken more than you planned to give. For some people it's physical, a run, a workout, 20 minutes of movement that processes the stress through the body rather than leaving it to accumulate. For others it's stillness, meditation, journaling, 10 minutes of genuine quiet. The specific form matters less than the consistency. What matters is that you have something, a real, practiced, reliable way to return to yourself when the weight of the day has pulled you away from your best thinking and your clearest values. Because leadership is a long game, and the people who sustain it, who are still growing, still trusted, still genuinely effective 5 and 10 and 20 years in, are not the ones who burn brightest and burned out. They are the ones who learn to restore themselves as a discipline. Are you treating your own renewal as seriously as you treat your responsibilities to others? Or have you built a version of your life where everyone else's needs are scheduled and yours are whatever's left? There is a reason that on every commercial flight, the safety instructions tell you to put on your own oxygen mask before helping anyone else, not because you matter more. Because you cannot help anyone from a place of depletion. The moment you run out of air, you become the emergency instead of the person managing it. Your standard must be higher than your mood. Your commitment to yourself must be as consistent as your commitment to the people counting on you. Because the version of you that shows up for others is built in the private moments, in the mornings before anyone is watching, in the rituals that nobody else sees, in the honest internal work that never makes it onto a performance review but shapes every single thing you do. Who are you when no one is watching? And is that person someone the version of yourself you most want to be would actually recognize? If you can read people, truly read them, understand what they carry, what they need, what they're afraid to say, you can lead them. But that ability begins here. It begins with the willingness to read yourself first, to be honest about your own emotional state with the same rigor and compassion you're trying to bring to everyone else. Lead yourself first, always. You can't lead anyone further than you've led yourself. You've just walked through 8 chapters, 8 skills, 8 shifts in how you read people, regulate yourself, and show up in the moments that actually matter. And if you've been honest with yourself throughout this, really honest, you already know which chapter hit hardest. You know which principle names something you've been living with for a long time without quite having the language for it. You know which practice you've been avoiding and which one you're ready to begin. Hold on to that. That's where your work starts. Here's what connects everything you heard today. Awareness, empathy, regulation, influence. 4 words, 4 pillars. And beneath all of them, one truth that runs through every chapter like a single thread. The quality of your leadership in every room, in every relationship, in every moment of pressure is determined not by how much you know, but by how well you know yourself and the people around you. That's the whole game, and it's a game you can get better at, starting now. So here's your challenge for the next 72 hours. Today, apply the 3-second pause in at least 3 conversations, not in the easy ones. In the ones where your first instinct is to react immediately, count to 3. Ask yourself if your response is chosen or automatic, then decide. Notice what changes when you give yourself that gap. Tomorrow, before one important conversation, spend 60 seconds reading the room before you speak. Check the emotional temperature. Adjust your approach to match where the other person actually is, not where it's convenient for you to assume they are. Watch what becomes possible when you arrive receiving instead of broadcasting. On day 3, find one person in your life and ask them a real question. Not the surface version. Ask how they're actually doing. Then hold the silence long enough for an honest answer to come. Don't fix. Don't redirect. Just listen. And notice what they share when they feel genuinely heard. 3 days. 3 practices. Small enough to start today. Significant enough to change something real if you do them with full attention. And if you want to take this further, the 30-day path is straightforward. Week 1. Focus on awareness. Name your emotions before you act on them. Read the rooms you walk into before you speak in them. Week 2. Build your listening. 70% hearing, 30% speaking. Week 3. Practice calm under pressure. Use the 4-4-4 breath. Lower your voice when the room escalates. Week 4. Lead through influence. Connect what you ask for to what other people actually value. Give people room to choose. 4 weeks, 4 skills, 1 at a time. The people who changed your life didn't always have the loudest voice. They had the most presence. They made you feel seen. They made you feel understood. Not because they were perfect, but because they had done the work. The quiet, unglamorous, daily work of leading themselves well enough to lead others. That's what emotional intelligence actually is. Not a personality trait. Not a gift some people are born with. A practice. Built in private. Visible in public. Earned one conversation, one pause. One genuine moment of connection at a time. If you can read people, truly read them, you can lead them. Start today. One pause. One real conversation. One moment of choosing response over reaction. That's where it begins.